All right, Josai. Good evening. Good evening. Let's begin. So tonight we're going to do a little something different. Whereas we normally do the Chalban, we're going to focus on a beautiful piece by Reb Tzaddik. So I will say, if you take a look, I'm sorry, I forgot to mark off the page, but if you look at the page that's marked Tzidkas HaTzadik over here, so we actually learn, hopefully we're going to resume Emir Hashem tomorrow morning, a little bit of Tzidkas HaTzadik. Reb Tzaddik HaKohen Level Blun, in his beautiful teaching, says something incredible. I will say, if you see, it's where it says page Shin Yud. So not the page, it's a double-sided sheet. The first page is the Gemara Maseches Brachas, not that page. The other page, Tzidkas HaTzadik, that where it says Shin Yud, the top part. The top part. So, Reb Tzaddik writes as follows. This is in the middle of Os Kuf Chav Zayin. So the topic here, again, is about Tshuva, but we're focusing over here on a very specific part. So Reb Tzaddik says like this. V'hinei, Bal Tshuva Amru Bazar Chai Kuf Chav Tes Sof Amud Aleph De B'shaita Chada Riga Chada B'zocha L'chol HaMadregos. Reb Tzaddik says over here, the power of becoming a Bal Tshuva, the power of true Tshuva, is that a Bal Tshuva could acquire all the spiritual levels within one moment. Within one moment. So let's talk about this a little bit. So if you go down a little bit, underneath the top section is a middle section called Be'urei HaChassidus. So take a look over here. So if we look in the right-hand column, so this is like a parish on Reb Tzaddik. So he writes as follows. V'hinei Bal Tshuva Amru Bo Chazal, Bizarre. When it comes to Bal Tshuva, Chazal spoke about the Bal Tshuva and they said the following. They said, "B'shaita chada berega chada, sheb'shah achas uberega echad bilvad." A Bal Tshuva, what a Bal Tshuva could accomplish in one moment. What could a Bal Tshuva accomplish in one moment? Zocha l'chol hamadregas. A Bal Tshuva in one moment has the ability to go ahead and literally climb all of the steps of spiritual accomplishment. V'yochol lahagia l'tachlis hiskarvus la'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And a Bal Tshuva, a true Bal Tshuva, in one moment, you both say, we're often like, right, we are Maimonideanly conditioned, right, to think about Tshuva through the lens of the Rambam. Right, so what's Maimonidean Tshuva? Again, it's not the Rambam, it's the Gemara Maseches Yuma. What does the Rambam do? Tshuva steps, right? It's a multi-step process, right? First, ultimately, there's Hakara Sachet, after recognize what I'm doing wrong. Aziva Sachet, stop doing it. Charata, remorse. Kabbalah ala asid, acceptance about the future. Reb Tzaddik here introduced, and all those steps are true. But Reb Tzaddik says there's also the concept of instantaneous tshuva. Instantaneous tshuva, where a person could fundamentally, wholly, and completely transform themselves and reach the highest levels of spiritual accomplishment in a moment. In a moment. And I will say, where does Reb Tzaddik get this from? So if you look in the bottom footnotes, and I'm taking a little bit of a journey over here, right? So a bottom footnotes where it says Mekoros Vitziyunim. So I made sure to make this extra small so you'd have difficulty reading it. Or sorry, just how the paper came out. So if you look at Os Yud Gimel, footnote Yud Gimel over here. So footnote Yud Gimel says like this: B'Gemara Amru Rebbe Elazar ben Drudja. So we'll say, so where does Reb Tzaddik, where does he find this raya that you could go ahead and accomplish, become a total Bal Tshuva, totally transform yourself, and reach the highest levels in a moment? Where does that come from? So he says, listen to this, Rebbe Elazar ben Drudja. So we'll say, what's Rebbe Elazar ben Drudja? Or Drodaya, okay, different pronunciations. Listen to this. The Gemara tells a story about Rebbe Elazar ben Drudja. Shelo hiniach zona achas ba'olam shelo ba'ala. Elazar ben Drudja, everybody has to have a hobby. What was his hobby? There was not one zona. There wasn't one prostitute that he did not frequent. Okay? He was dedicated. Right? So Lamaisa, such an immoral guy that literally there wasn't one zona that he didn't frequent. Pam achas shama sheyesh zona achas left-hand column in Mekoros Vitzionim bikrachei hayom v'haisa no teles kis dinar b'schara. He one time heard about a particular harlot who lived across the sea, and she charged an exorbitant amount of money. What did he do? Notel kis dinarin v'halach v'avar aleh shiva naras. So he took a bag full of money, crossed 7 rivers. Okay, so it's probably a little bit hyperbolic over here, but the idea is he took a lot of money and he traveled a long distance. Bishas hergel davar fichas. So he comes. It's a little bit of a short form of the Gemara. So she's waiting for him. they're about to go ahead and engage in an act of immorality, and she sighs. Sighs, S-I-G-S. Right? She sighs. She lets out a krechts. So what happened? Amra, she said, Kishem shafi chazu eino chazeres limkoma, kach Elazar ben Drudja in makabel no sobetshuva. And she said, the same way that I can't take back the sigh can't return to its point of origin, Elazar ben Drudja can never return to Hashem. Elazar ben Drudja can never return to Hashem. Yeah, I will say, you'll think to yourself, now this is a zona, right? This is a zona. She gives musar, right? She's like a mashgiach zona, right? Incredible, right? The Rosh Yeshiva zona, right? So we'll say, so what's the pshat? What's the pshat? Right? Makes sense. You know people, like, as it happens. We'll say, so I'll tell you like this. I think the pasha pshat in this Gemara is, she didn't say any of this. Elazar ben Drudja had a guilty conscience for what he was doing throughout his entire life. Let's say, you see, a yid knows what's right and what's wrong. But a lot of times in life I do stuff wrong. I try to drown out the inner voice that says, come on, stop it, get it together. But every once in a while, the inner voice becomes so loud that you can't not hear it. So I will say, Elazar ben Drudja lived an entire life of immorality. But the truth is, this was like one step too far. Like the notion of going ahead and cleaning out your life savings, right? And buying passage on a boat, right? Not to go on vacation, not to go on a safari, but to go to a zona. Even deep down, Elazar ben Drudja realized, I stepped over the line. So what happens? They're getting ready for the Ma'aseh Aveira. They're getting ready to sin. She sighs, and his neshama hears the sigh as the same way when you exhale that breath. It can't go back in. Elazar ben Drudja, you have now officially reached the point of no return. There's no way for you to do tshuva from this. So Elazar ben Drudja is shaken to his core. What does he do? Halach v'yasha ben shnei harim ugvos. Amar harim ugvos bikshu alay rachamim. So he goes and he sits between mountains, 2 mountains and 2 valleys. And he says, mountains and valleys, daven on my behalf. Intervene, supplicate on my behalf. Help me, help me. Amru lo, ad sha'anu mevakshim alecha, nevakesh al atzmenu. They say, Elazar ben Drudja, we have to take care of ourselves. We don't have time to daven for you. Amar shamayim v'aretz bikshu alay rachamim. Heaven and earth, daven for me. Amru, Ashanu evakshim alecha, nevakesh al atzmenu. Heaven and earth said, Elazar ben Drudja, before we daven for you, we have to daven for ourselves. Amar chamo levana biksha rachamim. Sun and moon, daven for me. Again, the sun and moon say, we can't daven, we have to daven for ourselves. Kochavim umazalos biksha, stars, constellations, daven for me. Amru lo achanu evakshim alecha, nevakesh al atzmenu. We can't daven, we have to daven for ourselves. So we'll say, so what do you see what's happening over here? We'll say, the truth is, this Gemara is so profound. Because what you see over here, first of all, something incredible. That even when someone lives a life of Aveira, there's good that still exists inside of him. And that good yearns to come out. Elazar ben Drudja led a life of complete immorality. But in that moment, something got through to his neshama. But here's what's interesting. He wants to change. But I will say, what's Elazar ben Drudja's approach to change? What's his approach to change? Hire someone, right? Outsource. Who's going to daven for me? And once again, the mountains aren't really talking back, and the valleys aren't talking back, and the sun's not talking back, and the moon's nothing's talking back. This is Elazar ben Drudja understanding that at the end of the day, he's looking for someone else to help him with his tshuva. And quote unquote, everyone else in the universe, everything else in the world, in the universe, is saying no. Until he finally reaches the conclusion. Amar, ein hadavar taloi elabi. He says, I now realize that at the end of the day, the matter is only dependent on me. It's only dependent on me. Right? At the end of the day, I can't rely on anyone else to do anything. It's wholly and fully dependent on me. What does he do? Hiniach rosho ben birkov vega bebechia achiyatas anishmaso. Literally, he put his head by his knees, which I will say is what? Your head by your knees? Fetal position, right? I was going to say crash position, right? Fetal position, right? He assumes the fetal position. He says to himself, you know what? There's no one else for me to depend on but me. And what happened? Vega And he cried and he cried and he cried until at the end of the day, his neshama left his body. Baskol came out and said, Rabbi Elazar ben Jerujah, Mizuman l'chaye olam haba. Everybody say, listen to this. When the Baskol comes out, how does the Baskol refer to him? Not as Elazar ben Jerujah, but how? Rabbi Elazar ben Jerujah. The koach of tshuva. The koach of tshuva. So Rabbi say, when we normally, so what happened? So Rabbi say, that's the end of the story. So Bacha Rebbe, the Gemara then says a comment. Rebbe cried, Va'amar, yesh karalama b'kama shonim. There are some people who could only acquire their world, give meaning to their lives over many years. V'yesh karalama b'sha'achos. But there are some people who acquire their world, meaning give meaning to their life in one moment. In one moment. So Rabbi say, the idea, the message of this Gemara is so profound. So in all the things that we spoke about before, no matter how much you mess up in life, there's still good inside of me. If I pay enough attention to the neshama is going to cry out for me to right the ship. It's tempting to think that my success is dependent on others. But at the end of the day, ein hadavar talui ela bi. In life, I will say, and by the way, it's a little bit overwhelming because more often than not, when we don't accomplish things in life, the knee-jerk reaction is, oh, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. And we'll say, I was just at a chasana, and I was by the chassan's dish, and there was a guy holding a plate of food, and someone else bumped into him, and the bumper. Right. So the guy holding food, we'll call him Ruvain, right? And Shimon bumps into him. Shimon bumped into him, and Shimon got like food all over his suit. Ruvain said, not my fault. Now he happens to be an attorney, Ruvain. I know him. Right? So it could be that's just like his conditioning. Not my fault. Let's say, but it was so interesting because sometimes human nature is that when something goes wrong, the knee-jerk reaction, not my fault, not me. It's ingrained with us from the time that we're kids, right? A kid gets into trouble. What's the most natural defense? Wasn't me. Oh, who was it? I don't know. The Rebbeinu Shalom, the Satan, the Sitra Achra, the Sir Lazazel, the Kohen Gadol, whoever it was, but it wasn't me. And when things don't go right for us in life, we always, like the reflexive reaction is, who could I pin the blame on? But I will say, here's the amazing part, because yet, if you outsource blame, it means you're giving up the reins of your existence to someone else. As painful as it is to accept blame for when things don't go right, it also, Rabbi Nachman says, if you believe that you have the ability to destroy, you should also believe you have the ability to build. You see, when you own it, as painful as it is to say, this is me, I own it. I made this mistake. I'm in this situation because of decisions I made, because of turns that I've made. I own it, and it hurts to own it. But on the flip side, when you own it, you also now have the koach, the power, to fix it. Elazar ben Jerujah, when he realizes how far off the reservation he has wandered, his knee-jerk reaction is not necessarily to blame anyone, but to look for others. Me'ayin yavo ezri. Who's going to help? And essentially everyone else says, not me, at least metaphorically. And he realizes, you're right, I will say the most profound words in the entire Shas. Ein hadavar talui elabi. At the end of the day, ein hadavar my life is dependent on me. Ein hadavar talui elabi. Your failures are yours. But guess what? If your failures are yours, then your ability to succeed is in your hand as well. If you own it, that ownership goes both ways. It's a bumper sticker for every Jew. Ein hadavar talui ela bi. Like people have, like my kid's an honor roll student or this, that. No, forget about that. Ein hadavar, which also is not good. I have to, just as an aside, I have a big taina on those bumper stickers. Because also, imagine for a moment, by the way, you're the kid in the car behind one of those bumper stickers, and you're not the honor student. Not the honor student. You want to be an honor student? Of course, fantastic. Not everybody's an honor student. By the way, the metric of success isn't necessarily being an honor student. A lot of people find other ways to succeed in life besides academics. Okay, but that was a commercial. Anyway, back to the regularly scheduled program. But the idea is, in hadavar talui ela bi. Now, the tzaddik looks at I must say again, can't just say enough. If we can only own that mindset and stop blaming everyone and everything else for our failures, and just own it, then ultimately, if I could own it that I broke it, I could own it that I could fix it. What Reb Tzaddik sees from this Gemara is the ability to affect instantaneous change. That's what he sees in this. Because I will say, if you notice again, I will say, what's the time frame of this Gemara? What's the time frame? I mean, the Gemara doesn't say, but it sounds like, how are all of these events unfolding? Relatively quickly, right? That's what it sounds like, right? He heard about the Zona. He saw the ad in the paper, right? He saw the Zona, cashed out his savings, got on the boat. Okay, traveling took a little bit, but he shows up at the Zona's house. She sighs. He has this reaction. He goes and he begs everyone else to help him. Again, it sounds like it's all happening immediately. And I will say again, so Elazar ben Drujah dies as a Baal Tshuva, and the Bas Kol comes out and says, Rabbi Elazar ben Drujah is invited to Olam Haba. And the Tzaddik sees this guy. And by the way, that's what Rebbe says. Rebbe says, Yesh kana olam b'shachs. What does it mean? You could acquire your world in one moment. It means that there's the ability to affect complete, comprehensive, instantaneous change. Instantaneous change. And the Tzaddik going back up to the Be'orei chassidus. Go back up for just a moment. But so that's the middle section. So the right-hand column. Let's read it again. V'hinei bal tshuva amru bo chazal b'zohar parashas Chayei Sarah de b'shaita chada berega chada sheb'sha achos u'berega achos bilvad hu zocha l'chol hamadregos. In one moment, you could scale the entire ladder of spiritual success. V'yachal la'agil l'tachlis his karvus la'kodesh baruch hu. And you could bring yourself close to the Yibam Shalom literally, in one moment. Who's the raya? Elazar ben Drujah. So Tzaddik says, for us, the lesson from this Gemara is the ability to affect comprehensive, cathartic, instantaneous change. Now, we'll say, so it turns out that there are two models of change, right? There's what we'll call incremental change, right? By the way, just to give a very simple example of this, right? You see this. Person wants to quit smoking, right? So there are two ways to quit smoking, right? How can you quit smoking? Right? I go down from one pack to 5 cigarettes, then to 4, then to 3, or cold turkey. You just stop. There are different models of change. So Tzaddik is just saying, Elazar ben Drujah teaches us the ability to transform myself from a Rasha to a Tzaddik literally in just a moment. And I will say, now the next part of Reb Tzaddik is incredible. Look at the brackets. Oh, it's very difficult. Correct. I would say. Correct. In other words, I would say. Remember, all Reb Tzaddik is saying is it's possible. It's difficult, right? It's difficult. By the way, not only is it difficult, but more often than not, I think one can make the argument that instantaneous change is not usually sustainable. In other words, correct. But again, Reb Tzaddik is not weighing the merits. What he's just saying is, just understand, it's possible. It's possible.
It's never connected to the Chalban from last week because, in his case, the neshama broke through the body. Basically, is what happened
by Pekido.
Yeah,
by Pekido, right?
So that's
correct. But I think what Steve is also bringing up is, remember again, the Chalban pointed out that what happens in the period of Pekido, there's the regression.
Right.
There's the regression. But I'll give you just see the raya to you is like this. The raya to you is the greatest example of instantaneous change. Greatest example is Klal Yisrael in the Midbar, right? We get to Har Sinai. And what do we say? Nasa v'nishma. Wow. Right? Maila, highest levels. Right? And a few days later, Chet Eyal. And by the way, a little bit after that, Chet Meraglim. Right? So, again, we're not debating the merit or the sustainability of it. All Reb Tzaddik is just trying to point out is that this model exists, and I'll tell you why it's important. You know what's important? You know what I say? And this, I think, really is a very deep yesod. There are times in life where I don't have the luxury of incremental change. In other words, right? There are times in life where I am in such a bad spot that I need to change things, and I need to change it now. It's going to be sustainable, not sustainable. It's going to work. I'm going to worry about that later. But right now, I'm in a really bad spot. And so I have to do something dramatic to get so to start making a tweak or a little pivot or this, it's not enough. I have, and by the way, I want to point out, that's Rabbi Elazar ben Drujah. Rabbi Elazar ben Drujah is the story of a desperate man, right? Why couldn't he just say, you know what? Okay, I'm not going to go to this zona. I was going to 4 zonas a week. I'm going to cut back. I'm only going to go to 3 zonas a week, which rather us say is an accomplishment, right? We would all say that's right. For a guy who's ridiculously immoral to go ahead and start scaling back on immorality, I will say is an incredible accomplishment. Rabbi Elazar ben Drujah felt that the change he needed to make was that instantaneous comprehensive change. There was no scaling back a little bit. There was no okay, I'll cut down on my...
Did you really think about it though? Or it sounds like he just fell into it.
But I think he must have thought about it, because why not say, okay, I realize my lifestyle is morally bankrupt. What do I need to do to change? It's almost like he has this jarring awakening that I can't do this anymore. This life, I can't have this life. I can't have any semblance of this life anymore. So it's almost as if he feels like he needs to swing the pendulum in the exact opposite direction. And again, it worked, right? They always say that's the yesod. It worked. That's Reb Tzadik's entire point. It worked. You see, we see this as a tragic story because Rabbi Elazar ben Drujah died, right? But Lamaisa, the tshuva was a tshuva. It worked.
Mm-hmm. So his actions affected the tshuva, not his tira.
Correct.
So that makes this a very different story than the typical instantaneous tshuva, right? Because typically the instantaneous tshuva is dying Kiddush Hashem. That's the instantaneous.
Correct.
This is the juxtaposition of that where it's
correct.
action.
In fact, I would tell you like this. So Azil's bringing up a very good point, because I think I both say people often assume when they read this Gemara, right, that it was his death that was the tshuva. But I'll draw your attention to the fact that the Gemara says, it doesn't just say he died. What does it say? Hiniach Rosha ben Birkov, right? He put his head by his knees. V'ga'a bebechia. Ga'a bebechia means he could not stop sobbing. That's the tshuva. It's almost as if, I will say, like when you cry, right? So the tears come out of your body. And sometimes, it's an interesting thing. Crying is very helpful. Why is crying helpful? Because crying is an emotional release. It's ga'a b'bichia means incessant sobbing. Almost as if what Rabbi Elazar ben Drujah is doing through the incessant sobbing is what? Is ridding himself of that inner purity. He's pushing out. He's pushing out that immorality, that negativity. He's pushing it out of himself. I don't want to be that person. And that's the tshuva. Now, the tragedy of the story is that he died. Right? That's the tragedy. And it's almost as if, what does his death mean? Does his death mean that at the end of the day he didn't really believe he could change? It's hard to understand the role of the death in here, right?
It's his neshama was born.
But
the neshama being
was complete.
Right? Maybe that's what it is. His life was in order.
Hashem's not going to take it unless you accomplish your mission.
See, it could very well.
Is giving us an example. There is no sustainability. You see.
Oh, so maybe right. That's right. But I think I happen to think like Baruch Meir. I happen to think that maybe Elazar ben Drujah's tachlis was to show us the ability to affect instantaneous change. And once he did that, it's almost as if he fulfilled the shlichus. Yeah. He fulfilled the shlichus, and then he's done. Again, it's speculative, but I would tend to agree with you. Right. Yeah. Had to leave. Right. Maybe it was. In other words, maybe there was just such a profound cleansing that took place that the neshama itself could not live in this world anymore. Enachinami.
Didn't the tshuva start when he first started asking for Achman?
Absolutely, that was the process. But the culmination ultimately of it is that ga'a bebechia. In other words, why does the Gemara have to say that ga'a bebechia? It's almost as if what's happening over here is like the body. It's like a fever. When you get a fever, it means your body is fighting something and it's pushing everything out. So kiviyachol again, the ga'a bebechia, his neshama is rejecting that tumah. So I will say, says Reb Tzadik, this is the example of instantaneous tshuva. I will say, now watch this. Well, at least begin this. I know we're going to get to, we're going to have to spend one more week on Lag BaOmer. All right, you'll be mochel. I will say, here's the wild part. Here's the wild part. So you're not going to be able to drink tonight? Baruch Hashem. Okay. Good. Baruch Hashem. So I'll say, look at the brackets. Here's the wild part. Get ready for this. Back in the Be'orei Chassidus, page Shin Yud, right-hand column. Brackets. Vishamati, B'Shem Harebi Rabbunim Miparshischa, Zichron Levracha. So Reb Tzadik's Rebbe was the Rebbe Rabbunim Pshischa. That was his Rebbe. I heard from my Rebbe, Ki davar zeh, sheyachol bal hatshuva lahagia al yidei tshuva berega echa bilvat al rom malos. I heard from my Rebbe that the real source of the idea that you could reach the highest levels of spiritual accomplishment in a moment is learned out from who? Husag mitoch yegias Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai alav shalom. Lifol sheikein lebal tshuva. So the Rebbe Rabbeinu Pshischa says, I agree that there is a concept of instantaneous change. But the notion of instantaneous change is not learned from Elazar ben Drudra. Elazar ben Drudra is an example of it, but he's not the makar. He's not the source. Who's the source? Rashbi. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Incredible, right? Tana Eloki. On Lag BaOmer, so we're learning this Torah. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is the example, or I should say, he's not the example, but he's the source of this concept that ultimately, again, complete, instantaneous change is possible. So also here's the problem. The Tzaddik does not explain to us how. Right? So all he does is, and also, again, I saw this today, I found this by mistake, because I'm hoping to restart Tzidkas HaTzadik message from tomorrow. I thought we're up to Kuf Chav Zayin. We're up to like Kuf Zayin. I made a mistake. I opened up this piece. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, Rishon bar Yochai. I would have never seen this on my own. And again, Reb Tzadik's telling me Rishon bar Yochai on Lag BaOmer. Shabbos say, here's what's beautiful about this. So Reb Tzadik dangles this in front of us, that the makar of the ability to affect instantaneous change comes from Rashbi. But I will say, if you notice, that's in the brackets, and he doesn't talk about this anymore. See, he dangles it, and then what? But then what? He doesn't tell us how. How does Rashbi teach us this? So I want to show you something interesting, at least for a couple of minutes. Well, we'll start it this week, we'll take it into next week. Suppose to take a look. On the other side of the page is Gemara in Maseches Berachos. So we're going to start us off this week, and then we're gonna do one more week of this afterwards. Tan Rabbanan. We'll say the underlying lines in the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan. V'yasafta diganecha. The pasuk says, "You shall collect your grain." So mat Talmud lomar. So what's the pshat? What's the Gemara's kasha? Torah says v'yasafta diganecha. You should collect your grain. We'll say, what's the shaila?
You need to tell us.
We'll say, does the Torah need to tell you? By the way, tomorrow morning, wake up and go to work. The truth is, in today's society, you might actually need someone to tell you, please wake up and go to work, right? But l'maisa, for the work ethic of the Yid, right, I don't need anyone to tell me, wake up and go to work, right? So why does the Torah Kedosh tell me, v'yasafta diganecha? Why say that? Matav and lomar. Here we go. L'fi shene'emar, lo yamosh haTorah, lo yamosh sefer haTorah zemipicha. Since ultimately the Torah says, this Torah shall never leave your mouth, right? We'll say there's a pasuk, lo yamosh Torah sefer Torah zemipicha. The Torah should never leave your mouth, which Rabosai means, again, remember this is Sefer Yoshua, which means Rabosai that a Yid should always be engaged in Torah, right? That's my avodah. Should always be engaged in Torah. So Rabosai, here's the problem. I have now two contradictory psukim, right? On one hand, the Torah says v'yasafta diganecha. What does v'yasafta diganecha teach me? What's the mandate from v'yasafta diganecha? Go to work. Okay, that's one mandate. Then lo yomush sefer haTorah hazemi picha teaches me what? Torah. Always learn. So which one is it? So should I work or should I always learn? So yochel dvam kichsavan. So you might have thought to interpret the pasuk literally that you should always learn. Talmud lomar v'yasafta diganecha. Haneg bohen minag derech eretz divrei Rabbi Yishmael. So Rabbi Yishmael comes along and says, no, you might see about say if the Torah would have just said, or if the Torah would have just said, lo yamush sefer Torah zemipicha, you would have thought, what's the job of a Jew? All Torah, all the time. That's what a Jew is supposed to do. Only learn. Only learn. Rabbi Yishmael comes along and says, to teach us that what? Teach us that what? You have to work. Which I will say, by the way, is such an incredible yesod. Rabbi Yishmael is saying, work is l'chatchila. Right? Life is a synthesis. Life is v'yasafta diganecha and lo yomosh haTorah zemipicha. I have to work. Working is part of life. And I will say, not just like as an accommodation, not working as a l'chatchila, to go out into the world, v'yasafta diganecha, make a difference, have an impact. That's l'chatchila, but at the same time, also make sure that you carve out time to learn Torah. This is the position of Rabbi Yishmael. Comes along Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai comes along and says, Rashbi, Omer, Efshar Adam Chorish B'Shas Charisha, V'Zareh B'Shas Zriya, V'Kotzer B'Shas Ktsira, V'Dash B'Shas Disha, V'Zor B'Shas Haruach, Torah Matehei Aleha. Says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, really? We're supposed to work? Think about this. He's talking about from an agricultural perspective. If you have to go ahead and plow in the plowing season, right? Plant in the planting season, harvest in the harvest season, thresh in the threshing season, winnow in the winnowing season. What's he going to be busy? How long? How long? The entire year. When are you going to have time to learn? Shabbos Yerushalayim Chai comes along. Ella, bizman sheisra osir tzon shamak malachten asas aidei achirim shneimar va'amdu zarim oru tzonachem. O bizman sheisra osir tzon shamakom melachton naasis aidei atzmon shneimar v'asafta diganecha. Shabbos said, listen to this. Comes along Rashbi, and Rashbi says, and Shabbos said, this is incredible. Rashbi says that really, what's the mandate in life? The mandate in life is is lo yamosh haTorah zos mipicha. Learn Torah all the time. What does v'asafta diganecha refer to? Asafta diganecha is when you're not doing what Hashem wants you to do. Which is interesting because it's in the paragraph of V'haya'im Shamua Tishmu. Right? But okay, we'll leave that on the side. But right, Rashbi comes along and says, the job of a Jew in life is to learn Torah. And if a Jew lives, if we live in accordance with the Ratzon Hashem, our work is done through others. Others take care of us. When a Yid is steeped in Torah, at the end of the day, the Ribono Shel Olam will take care of all of their needs. When we're not steeped in Torah, then we have to work. And not only do we have to do our own work, but if we're not steeped in Torah, then what? Then what? Then ultimately we'll have to do the work of others as well. So Rabbi say, this Gemara is a profound life Gemara. Fundamental, yesodistic machlokes. How is a Jew supposed to live life? Rabbi Yishmael says, you should work. L'chatchila. It's good to work. And when you're not working, what should you be doing? What should you be doing? At least some of the time you're not working, learning. But the work-learning balance is l'chatchila. Rabbi Shimon Yochai says, no, not at all. What are you talking about? A Yid should learn Torah. And if you learn Torah in the right way, and you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the right way, your work will get done through. You don't have to work. Rabbi say, I'll point out to you. So Rashbi is saying this through life experience. Right? Because remember again, we know what happened to the Rashbi. He ran away from the Romans. He hid in the cave. Right? He hid in the cave for a number of years. And I will say, what happened? And what happened? He was sustained by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rashbi says, if you put your complete faith in Hashem, He will take care of you. And I will say, what I do want to point out is as follows. When Rashbi says that if you put your faith in Hashem, Hashem will take care of you, even if you don't work, it's important to understand Rashbi's definition of Hashem taking care of you. Right? It's not an apartment in Ramat Eshkol, right? And business class tickets home for Pesach, right? And a latest model lease and the nice thing, right? Remember, Rashbi was supported with boxer and water. So Rashbi says, if you put your faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He's going to take care of you. But taking care means you're ready and willing to subsist on the bare minimum. If you're ready for that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't fail you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not fail you. If you're a little more high maintenance, Rashbi would say, probably my advice is probably get a job. I will say, but very important so, because people very often misunderstand this Gemara that Rashbi is saying, just learn and Hashem will take care of everything. Yes, just Hashem will take care of everything as long as you are low maintenance, shebelow maintenance. That Hashem will take care of everything. But if you need more than boxer and water, you can't rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu to provide that. That you're going to have to provide for yourself. Fundamental machlokes. Shabbos says, the Gemara just sends obviously, Amar Abaye says, Harbe also Rabbi Yishmael, but also Biyadan. Many people adopted the position of Rabbi Yishmael, and it worked. Harbe also, I'm sorry, Rabbi Yishmael Achai, below also Biyadan. But many tried like Rashbi, and it did not work. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, says the operative word here is harbe. The model of Rashbi is not for the masses. It's not for the masses. It's for some. It's for some Yechidei Skula who are willing to give up all of the trappings of Olam Hazeh to go ahead and devote themselves to Torah, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Some people could follow that model of Rashbi. But for the masses should follow the position, the system of Rabbi Yishmael. Go to work, get a job, have the synthesis of Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, and you're good to go. And I both say, why is this Gemara important for us? See, I think what Rashbi is saying, I both say, is that on a level, and this is a truth, it's just a hard level to reach. If a person could fully and wholly give themselves over to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that act of fully and wholly giving one's self over to Hashem allows one to be sustained by the Shekhinah. You could do it, but it requires a wholly, fully giving over of oneself to Hashem. And I will say, maybe that's the pshat in Reb Tzadok. See, I will say again, going back to Reb Tzadok. Reb Tzadok said that the makar, the source for the idea of instantaneous tshuva, ultimately is not Rabbi Elazar ben Jeruja. He's an example. But the makar, the source of it, is Rashbi. Because maybe if we're reading these two things together, what does Rashbi teach us? Rashbi teaches us that a person could have a moment in which they fully give themselves over to Hashem. Ribono shel olam, I am yours. I'm yours. And if I could reach that level, even just for a moment, of fully and wholly giving myself over to Hashem, that in that moment, I could affect cathartic, comprehensive, instantaneous change. See, Rashbi is the one who teaches us that if you give yourself over to Hashem, just for that moment, everything could change. Everything. That was his life. That Rashbi modeled this. He lived this life of giving himself over to Hashem. What Reb Tzadok is saying is, Rashbi says, even if you can't do it for your whole life, if you could just do it for a moment, to fully say, Ribono shel olam, for this one moment, I'm yours. We'll say, do you hear what this is? See, we often think of our avodas Hashem in like a continuum of time, sustainability. Maybe what Reb Tzadok is teaching us is, maybe the goal is not to be great for the rest of my life. Maybe the goal is to just find one pure moment of dveikus. Just one pure moment where I could say in this moment, in this moment right now, Hashem, I'm yours. I'm fully yours. Also, I'll tell you, I find that the time that is most ripe to have this moment is Kabbalah Shabbos. Kabbalah Shabbos is the time for this. Because the truth is, Kabbalah Shabbos is the most incredible part of the week because the week is behind you. Right? Shabbos Kodesh is just starting. Right? You don't yet have your face. You haven't face planted in the soup yet, right? You haven't yet conked out for the week. You have like that little last burst of energy. So, that's why the Balei Tefillah sometimes get a little bit annoyed with me. That's why I am a fierce micromanager of Kabbalah Shabbos. It's not a time for new nigunim, and it's not a time for this. It's a time for tried, true, and tested. Right? That's it. There's nothing new. Ein chadash tachas hashamesh. You want to use a kumzitz for new nigunim, that's fine. Kabbalah Shabbos is to tap into the Kabbalah Shabbos is that moment. To be able to say, Ribono shel olam, I'm yours. How long am I yours for? Usually it lasts until the end of Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos. Right? Usually it lasts. Because else you know what happens then. Then it's Kaddish. And, I often find it's hard to keep Kavanah during Kaddish Yasam. Because what's a Kaddish Yasam is like, it's like mourners karaoke, right? It's like, right, Steve, right? It's like this one, this pace, this one, this tone, this one, this note, it's all over the place. Like, oh my God, like, I cannot actually believe that anyone's neshama is getting aliyah from this, right? But Lamaisa, right, but Lamaisa, but I would say, but so again,
only for the Thursday night share.
You're right. Station and right at the podcast. I'll record. I'll edit this out after. No, it's true. I'll say again. You know what the beautiful part of a Thursday night Erev Shabbos shir with such beautiful meichel and such beautiful mashkas. It's a good time to be emes. It's okay. Life is about being emestic. I will say. So just like I'm going to be emestic, that the truth is I'm not always inspired. And I'm not always in a state where I'm kula la Hashem. And the beauty of Reb Tzadik says it's okay. Can you just get there for a moment? Could you just get there for a minute? Can you just get there for a stanza of L'chadodi? Can you just get there during a little dance? Can you just get there during Mizmor Shli Yom HaShabbos? Can you just get there for Anu B'Koach? Can you just get there for something? Because all I need is a minute. That's all I need. If I could find a minute that I am kula l'Hashem, that I am fully l'Hashem, Rashbi says, all you need is 1 minute to be fully devoted to Hashem, and that 1 minute could change your life. How long will the change last for? I will say, as I get older, I realize life is all about just experiencing things in the present. How long is it going to last for? Probably by the time I get home from shul, right, it's going to be gone. Because you know what happens. Let's be honest. Again, this is the honesty share. It's kind of like a support group, like a little support group. That's right. You know what happens when you get home? It takes like about 4 minutes until you're annoyed about something. Right? Come on, right? Someone says something, someone does something, something's not ready somewhere. Where is this person? Where is that person, right? And I was on just such a high, and now I'm profoundly annoyed. And I was saying, that's life. And it's good to embrace it. So the truth is, the Kula LaHashem moment lasts usually for a stanza of L'chadodi, a couple of stanzas, maybe through Mizmor Shli Yom HaShabbos, but that's okay. I don't need it to last longer. If I could just tap into it for a little bit of time. Reb Tzadik, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai teaches me, all you need is 1 moment. All you need is 1 moment to change your life. All you need is 1 moment to change who you are. It's not going to be sustainable. Who says life is about sustainability? And who says Ruchnius is about sustainability? Maybe Ruchnius is just about experiencing those moments of incredible devekus whenever I can connect to them, whenever I can achieve them. I can't sustain it. It doesn't matter. The goal is just to experience it. This is the lesson of Elazar ben Druja, and I will say incredibly now, all right, okay, we're a little bit past Lag BaOmer already, but this was the legacy of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that if a person wholly and fully gives themselves over to Hashem, even if just for a moment, that 1 moment of kula, of complete dveikus, empowers me to undergo fundamental, comprehensive, cathartic change. So we'll say we should be zocha. So for me, it's Kabbalah Shabbos, but we all have to find our different times where we could tap in and connect to the Shekhinah and just be able to say, I'm feeling right now, the way I'm feeling is I am Kulo LaHashem. Yimon Shalom, I am yours. We should all be Zocha and Meretz Hashem to find that moment. And when we find that moment, to make the comprehensive change. Whether the change lasts or the change doesn't last is really immaterial. What's most important is find the moment, grab the moment, and maximize the moment. We'll stop over here. Okay, we got through the Meretz Hashem next week. Nice. We will the Meretz Hashem continue with the Chalban. Shkoyach.
Rabbi, you want to sing along?
Addition again.